What makes the perfect royal wedding tiara? The grandest piece available? A jewel worn by generations of brides? Or simply the one that feels right for a single extraordinary day? The answer changes from wedding to wedding. Today, we step into a world of blinding diamond brilliance and the captivating stories these great brides wore on their heads for the most important day of their lives. Behind these 15 tiaras are choices shaped by family, expectation, personal taste, and the image finally seen by the world. And their meaning becomes far more revealing once we look beyond the diamonds. From a diadem that snapped just minutes before the ceremony to a legendary jewel that vanished into a private collection forever. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. Let's begin with a jewel that had a surprisingly long journey to its ultimate moment of glory. I'm talking about the famous Cartier tiara with its delicate diamond scroll motif. Back in the summer of 1936, the House of Cartier created this rather petite diadem. By November, the Duke of York had purchased it for his wife Elizabeth. But history had other plans. Very shortly after, they became King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. For the wife of a reigning monarch, such a modest piece simply wasn't quite grand enough, so she moved on to much larger, more substantial jewels. In 1944, the tiara was given to the young Princess Elizabeth as an 18th birthday present. It is quite striking to think about that contrast, receiving a glittering diamond gift right in the middle of the severe austerity of the Second World War. Because of those strict wartime conditions, the future queen never actually wore it in public. Instead, the piece slowly began to find its purpose on the younger members of the family. The queen frequently loaned it to her sister, Princess Margaret, and later to her daughter, Princess Anne, for whom it was one of her very first tiaras. But once Princess Anne moved on to more substantial jewelry, this little diadem went back into the vault for decades. And then, in 2011, true global fame finally caught up with this tiara. When Catherine Middleton walked down the aisle in it, with the whole world watching, this largely forgotten piece instantly became the most recognizable wedding tiara of the 21st century. There is one detail about her bridal look that I absolutely love. Catherine's earrings, a wedding gift from her parents, were custom-made to perfectly echo the tiara's scroll design. If you look closely, nestled in that design is a tiny diamond acorn, taken directly from the Middleton family coat of arms. Even though Catherine only wore the Cartier Halo tiara that one single time, today it is completely and wonderfully intertwined with her image. The next piece I want to share with you took a completely different path to the altar. In 1999, when Sophie Rhys-Jones married Prince Edward, her choice of a wedding tiara sparked a flurry of questions. The official statement from the palace was incredibly brief. They simply noted that the piece came from the Queen's private collection and had been altered by the crown jeweler, David Thomas. But you know how observant royal jewelry lovers can be. Internet sleuths came up with a fascinating theory that is still discussed today. They noticed that the 4 diamond elements of the tiara look remarkably like the detachable diamond anthemions from Queen Victoria's own regal circlet, which dates all the way back to the 1850s. The circlet itself had its diamonds removed in the 1930s to make a new crown, and its empty frame now sits in the Museum of London. What is even more intriguing is that a photograph of the circlet's original storage box shows empty velvet spaces that perfectly match the shape of the anthemions on Sophie's tiara. The palace has never officially confirmed or denied this theory, so we can only guess that on her wedding day, the bride might have been wearing a true historical relic. On the day of the wedding, some observers felt that the pieces of the tiara were spaced a bit too far apart, leaving quite a bit of empty space. However, in 2019, which happened to be the year she and Edward celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary, Sophie debuted a newly redesigned version of the tiara. The anthemions were brought closer together, and the base was made more substantial. To me, this tiara feels like a lovely reflection of their marriage. Over the years, it found its balance, gained strength, and only became more harmonious with time. We all know that wedding mornings can be stressful, but few brides have had to deal with a genuine jewelry crisis mere hours before the ceremony. I am sure you are already familiar with the famous story of Queen Mary's fringe tiara, but it is impossible to talk about royal brides without mentioning it. Often confused with other fringe pieces in the royal vaults, this particular diadem was crafted in 1919 by E. Wolfe & Co. for Gerard, using diamonds from a necklace given to Queen Mary for her wedding back in 1893. As the well-known story goes, when Princess Elizabeth was getting ready on her wedding morning in 1947, the tiara's frame suddenly snapped. While the Queen Mother calmly reassured her daughter, the court jeweler hurriedly mended the piece just in time for the bride to leave for Westminster Abbey. If you look closely at the historical photos from that day, you can still spot a small gap between the center fringe and the larger spike to its right, a charming, lingering trace of that hasty repair. Over the decades, this diadem has become a beautiful symbol of family continuity. Princess Anne wore it for her own wedding in 1973, and then, in the summer of 2020, Princess Beatrice chose it for hers. She paired the tiara with a remodeled vintage dress belonging to the Queen. I find this gesture incredibly moving. To choose her grandmother's gown and that very tiara for a quiet, almost secret wedding during the strict restrictions of the pandemic feels like such a grounded, comforting nod to family history when the world around them was in chaos. While some royal brides lean into quiet sentimentality, others embrace pure, unapologetic glamour. The Queen's younger sister, Princess Margaret, went for a completely different scale altogether. She didn't borrow a tiara from the royal family vaults for her big day. She bought it herself. Her choice was the magnificent Poltimore tiara, originally created by Gerard in the 1870s. It was purchased for £5,500 in 1959, when the Poltimore family put the piece up for auction as a highly important tiara. Gerard designed it as a masterpiece of transformable jewelry that can be completely dismantled into a diamond fringe necklace and 11 separate brooches. In fact, Margaret wore the piece as a necklace at several events before her wedding, saving the grand reveal of the fully assembled, colossal tiara exclusively for her walk down the aisle. It was the absolute focal point of her wedding day. Her bridal gown, designed by Norman Hartnell, was deliberately kept simple, with clean lines and zero heavy embroidery. This minimalist dress, combined with her voluminous 1960s bouffant, allowed the towering Poltimore tiara to take complete center stage, perfectly capturing Margaret's vibrant and slightly rebellious spirit at the altar. Sadly, unlike the fringe tiara, which remained safely in the royal vaults, the Poltimore left the family forever. After Margaret's passing, her children were forced to auction it in 2006. It sold for an astounding £926,400 to an anonymous buyer and vanished from public view. But where one legendary jewel disappears, others miraculously return. In fact, the next two brides I want to talk about pulled their stunning headpieces straight out of the dark and back into the spotlight. It never ceases to amaze me how certain jewels can completely vanish from the royal radar, only to make a triumphant return decades later. Queen Mary's diamond bandeau is a perfect example of this quiet disappearing act. At the very heart of this piece sits a beautiful diamond cluster brooch, which was originally a wedding gift presented to the future Queen Mary back in 1893 by the County of Lincoln. Mary, who had such a brilliant eye for jewelry design, eventually had a new, flexible, geometric Art Deco tiara created around this brooch in 1932. She wore it occasionally for less formal evening events, but after she was photographed in it at a film premiere in 1951, the bandeau seemingly vanished. For an astonishing 65 years, it was tucked away in the royal vaults, completely unseen by the public. That long slumber ended in 2018, when Meghan Markle wore it for her wedding at St. George's Chapel. Prince Harry once fondly recalled how surreal it felt to sit with his grandmother, the Queen, and select this very piece. The clean, simple lines of the tiara perfectly complemented the bride's modern gown. The tiara is incredibly beautiful, but due to its recent and somewhat complex associations with the Sussexes, its immediate future in the royal rotation feels a bit cloudy. I am genuinely curious to hear what you think. When, and perhaps on which royal lady, do you think this tiara will appear again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. While we at least had a few vintage black and white photographs of Queen Mary wearing her bandeau, The headpiece chosen by Princess Eugenie in the autumn of 2018 was an absolute jaw-dropping shock to jewelry watchers everywhere. Created by the Parisian jewelry house Boucheron in 1919 for the wealthy society hostess Margaret Greville, the Greville Emerald Kokoshnik is nothing short of a masterpiece. Designed in the Russian style that was so fashionable at the time, it features dazzling diamonds set in platinum. But what truly commands your attention is the mesmerizing 93.70-carat cabochon emerald resting right in the center. When Mrs. Greville passed away in 1942, she bequeathed her magnificent jewelry collection to her dear friend, the Queen Mother. Yet, for reasons we may never fully know, neither the Queen Mother nor Queen Elizabeth II ever wore this specific emerald tiara in public. It is almost hard to fathom that such a spectacular work of art lay resting in the pitch-black darkness of a velvet-lined safe for 76 years. Seeing it finally step into the sunlight, causing a global sensation against the crisp autumn backdrop of Princess Eugenie's wedding, was a truly unforgettable moment. It was the perfect choice for her, bringing an unexpected and deeply romantic pop of rich green color to her bridal look, and proving that some treasures are well worth the wait. While we are so used to seeing royal brides covered in a blinding array of diamonds, there is one historical piece that completely breaks all the expected rules. The Swedish cameo tiara is a true anomaly in the royal vaults, simply because it does not feature a single diamond. Instead, this extraordinary diadem is formed entirely of red gold, delicate seed pearls, and a series of magnificent antique cameos. Its story takes us all the way back to 1809, when Napoleon Bonaparte commissioned the piece for his wife, Empress Josephine. The intricately carved cameos depict various scenes and figures from ancient mythology, heavily focusing on stories of love and passion. The central cameo, for instance, shows Venus disarming Cupid. It is an incredibly poetic and fitting symbolism for a wedding day, which explains why it was eventually adopted as the ultimate bridal tiara for the Swedish royal family. It was actually Princess Birgitta who started the tradition of using this specific piece as a bridal tiara in 1961, perfectly borrowing on the romantic elements represented in the cameos. Just 3 years later, her sister, Princess Desiree, followed suit for her own wedding. When Sylvia Summerlath married King Carl XVI Gustaf in 1976, she proudly wore it too, noting that it felt like a good omen since the king's sisters had worn it before her. It is not an easy piece to manage, though. Queen Sylvia once admitted that the tiara is incredibly fragile, making it a rather nerve-wracking piece to handle, but a beautiful tradition is hard to resist. In the summer of 2010, Crown Princess Victoria proudly walked down the aisle wearing these historic cameos. I absolutely love how this choice created a stunningly unusual and boldly historical look for a 21st century bride. It is a bold departure from the typical modern bridal sparkle, anchoring the modern monarchy firmly in its rich, romantic past. Speaking of unwavering bridal traditions, there is another diadem with deep Swedish connections that boasts an origin story straight out of a classic romance novel. In 1905, the Swedish Prince Gustav Adolf was on a royal tour in Cairo when he met Princess Margaret of Connaught. The two fell deeply and instantly in love right there in Egypt. To honor the beautiful beginning of their romance, the Khedive of Egypt, the country's governor, commissioned the legendary House of Cartier to create a wedding gift for the couple. The result was the exquisite Khedive of Egypt tiara, a delicate diamond piece featuring graceful scroll and marguerite motifs. Princess Margaret tragically passed away at a young age, and her magnificent jewelry collection was divided among her children. While her sons inherited famous jewels like the Connaught diamond tiara and the King Edward VII ruby tiara, it was her only daughter, the future Queen Ingrid of Denmark, who received the deeply sentimental Khedive of Egypt tiara. It was Ingrid who took this beautiful piece and turned it into an absolute dynasty rule. She established a heartfelt family tradition. Her female descendants would wear the Khedive of Egypt tiara on their wedding days. And what a magnificent tradition it became. Ingrid's 3 daughters all walked down the aisle in this very Cartier diadem. Princess Anne-Marie wore it first in 1964 when she married the King of Greece, followed by the future Queen Margaret of Denmark in 1967 and Princess Benedicta in 1968. But the rule certainly didn't stop there. The family tradition continued with Queen Ingrid's granddaughters. The tiara was loaned to Princess Alexandra, Princess Alexia, and later Princess Natalie for their respective weddings. Can you think of any other tiara that has seen so many brides step up to the altar? This incredible legacy remains very much alive today. Just recently, in September 2024, Princess Theodora of Greece walked down the aisle in Athens, wearing this very Cartier diadem. What makes her bridal moment especially poignant is that she wore it exactly 60 years after her mother, Queen Anne-Marie, wore the exact same tiara for her own wedding. It is such a beautiful thought. A single, sparkling piece of jewelry serving as a golden thread, connecting a modern bride to a long, unbroken line of women in her family on their most important day. While some royal jewels become deeply rooted in a single dynasty, others embark on extraordinary journeys across borders and shifting empires. The Prussian diamond tiara is an absolute world traveler, and it has a remarkable history of accompanying brides to the altar across different European capitals. Created in 1912 by the Berlin court jeweler, Coquefort Princess Victoria Louise, the only daughter of the German Kaiser, this delicate piece features beautiful neoclassical motifs, elegant columns, laurel leaves, and the classic meander, or Greek key pattern. In 1938, it left Germany for Greece as a wedding gift for Victoria Louise's daughter, Princess Frederica, who notably wore it for her engagement portraits. But its true legacy as a bridal diadem began in 1962, when it traveled to Spain in the bridal luggage of Princess Sophia. She wore this very tiara for her Catholic and Orthodox wedding celebrations in Athens before becoming the Queen of Spain. Decades later, it was exactly this tiara, infused with such a rich, complex European history, that Queen Sophia loaned to the journalist Letizia Ortiz on her wedding day to the Prince of Asturias in 2004. Even though Queen Letizia now frequently opts for the grander, more substantial pieces in the Spanish royal vaults, I always find myself admiring the elegant, architectural lines of this particular diadem. It is a subtle piece, but one that feels incredibly meaningful because it has truly lived through history alongside its wearers. In striking contrast to that globe-trotting piece, our next tiara has remained fiercely loyal to its origins, passed down through generations within a single family to adorn bride after bride. The Bavarian sapphire floral tiara is an absolute vision of color and intricate craftsmanship. It is designed as a delicate wreath of diamond leaves intertwined with diamond flowers, but what truly catches the eye are the vivid blue sapphire centers blooming within those floral motifs. The tiara's origins carry a bit of a mystery. It is widely thought to have been constructed from a set of brooches originally given to the mother of Princess Isabella of Bavaria by her grandfather, the Duke of Arenberg. However, since no photographs of those original brooches exist today, this origin story remains a fascinating piece of family lore. Princess Isabella was the first to wear the completed tiara in a photograph taken in 1912, and from there, it became a beloved bridal favorite for the House of Bavaria. Princess Ermengarde wore it beautifully on her wedding day in 1950. The tradition continued strong into the 21st century. Princess Alice wore it for her wedding in 2009, followed by her sister Princess Auguste the very next year in 2010. It also shone on Henriette Groos when she married into the family in 2017. Most recently, in May 2023, the sapphire wreath appeared magnificently on Sophie Evekink during her wedding to Prince Ludwig, the future head of the House of Bavaria. It is just so wonderful to see that this tiara continues to be actively used today, celebrating new marriages rather than gathering dust in a vault. Personally, I think floral motifs are absolutely perfect for a wedding day. There is something so naturally romantic and fitting about them. Do you agree with me? Or do you prefer more classic geometric designs for a bride? Let me know in the comments. Some of the most iconic bridal tiaras in history do not actually belong to reigning royal houses at all. Instead, they are fiercely guarded aristocratic heirlooms. Perhaps the most famous example of this is the Spencer tiara. Because of the global spectacle of the 1981 royal wedding, we are so used to thinking of this as Princess Diana's signature piece. However, it is fundamentally a family heirloom. This stunning jewel has graced the heads of nearly all the brides in the Spencer family. Before Lady Diana Spencer captivated the world, her older sisters, Lady Jane and Lady Sarah, wore the tiara for their own weddings in 1978 and 1980. The bridal tradition continued when her brother's first wife, Victoria Lockwood, walked down the aisle in 1989. Decades later, Diana's niece Celia McCorquodale kept the custom alive, wearing it for her nuptials in 2018. The design itself is exquisitely romantic, woven from delicate diamond tulips, star-shaped flowers, and graceful scrolls. But the physical construction of the Spencer tiara is just as fascinating as its legacy, because it wasn't actually created all at once. It is a composite piece, stitched together from different family jewels over time. The very center element, that beautiful, sweeping, heart-shaped curve, was actually a wedding gift itself, given to Diana's grandmother, Cynthia, Viscountess Althorpe, back in 1919. The oldest pieces of the tiara are at the very ends, which are said to have come from a jewel belonging to Frances, Viscountess Montague, in the 19th century. Finally, in 1937, the master jewelers at Gerard added matching elements to seamlessly unite the different parts into the continuous, elegant diadem we see today. Because of this unique history, when a Spencer bride wears this tiara down the aisle, she is literally wearing a timeline of her family's history. Sometimes, the choice to wear an aristocratic family heirloom goes far beyond keeping a tradition alive. It becomes a deeply emotional tribute. The 2012 wedding of Countess Stéphanie de Lannoy to the hereditary Grand Duke Guillaume of Luxembourg holds a very touching story. Less than 2 months before the grand celebration, Stéphanie's mother suddenly passed away. The wedding festivities were spread across 2 days, allowing the bride to beautifully honor both the family she was joining and the one that raised her. For the spectacular pre-wedding gala dinner, Stéphanie embraced her new royal role, dazzling in the diamond vine leaves tiara, a magnificent piece borrowed from her groom's family collection. But the next day, as she walked down the aisle for the religious ceremony, the brilliant pageantry gave way to quiet, loving memory. Stéphanie chose not to wear a grand ducal piece, but rather her own family's heirloom, the Lannoy tiara. Crafted in 1878 by the Belgian jeweler Altenlo, this petite platinum and diamond tiara is topped with a striking pear-shaped diamond. It is an incredibly delicate piece. In fact, because it is so lightweight and lacks the sturdy, velvet-wrapped base we usually see on larger diadems, it actually tipped backwards slightly in her hair during the ceremony. Alongside the Lannoy tiara, Stéphanie wore her own engagement ring, along with the engagement ring belonging to her late mother, while completing the look with a pair of diamond earrings kindly loaned by her new mother-in-law, Grand Duchess Maria Theresa. But importantly, her marriage into the Luxembourg royal family did not mean the Lannoy tiara was absorbed into the Grand Ducal collection. Just as Stéphanie's sisters and sisters-in-law had worn it for their own weddings before her, the tiara remains a cherished Lannoy bridal tradition. We saw this confirmed just recently, in September 2024, when the tiara returned to the altar to adorn Stéphanie's niece, Countess Caroline de Lannoy. But since we mentioned the magnificent diamond vine leaves tiara that Stéphanie wore the night before her wedding, it absolutely deserves its own moment in our bridal spotlight. This jewel is actually one of the most prominent and historical wedding tiaras in the Luxembourg royal collection. Crafted in the second half of the 19th century and set in yellow gold and silver, it features a dazzling, all-diamond design of delicate vine leaves and berries. While Grand Duchess Maria Theresa wore it frequently over the decades during her husband's reign, its true legacy is as a bridal diadem. Back in the 1950s, all 4 daughters of Grand Duchess Charlotte, Princesses Alex, Marie Gabrielle, Elizabeth, and Marie Adelaide, wore this exact tiara on their wedding days. And its romantic story certainly didn't end in the mid-20th century. Just a year after Stéphanie's wedding, Princess Claire chose the diamond vine leaves tiara for her own walk down the aisle when she married Prince Felix in 2013. I absolutely love her choice because it carried a wonderful, hidden personal meaning. Felix and Claire actually manage a beautiful wine estate in the south of France together, making a tiara covered in sparkling diamond vine leaves the ultimate, perfectly tailored bridal accessory. When we think of wedding tiaras, what usually comes to mind are light, almost airy bands of delicate leaves and petals. But the Hanoverian floral tiara from the mid-19th century completely breaks that stereotype. This is a truly massive, substantial piece of jewelry. In March 2018, Alessandra de Osma wore it beautifully for her wedding to Prince Christian of Hanover, the second in line to the former Hanoverian throne. It wasn't the first time the piece had been seen on a bride in the family, as her sister-in-law, Ekaterina Malasheva, wore it for her own wedding just a year earlier. But seeing it on Alessandra really highlighted how a grand historical diadem can anchor a modern bridal look. If you look closely at that dense, intricate pattern, you will notice that it is formed by intertwining branches of honeysuckle. I find this detail so charming because, in the 19th century language of flowers, the honeysuckle was a beloved symbol of enduring faith, secret love, and sensuality. It adds such a rich, hidden layer of meaning to a wedding day, don't you think? While we love the tradition of family heirlooms, some brides manage to completely surprise us by choosing something entirely unexpected. We saw exactly this happen very recently, on June 6, 2026, when Peter Phillips, the son of Princess Anne, married Harriet Sperling in the Cotswolds. Many royal watchers fully expected Harriet to borrow one of her new mother-in-law's well-known pieces. Instead, she stepped out of the car in a custom lace gown by Amelia Wickstead, complete with a breathtaking 10-foot train embroidered with wildflowers, wearing a delicate diamond and pearl tiara that no one in the royal watching community immediately recognized. Where did she find such a hidden treasure? The answer is actually rather elegant. Harriet borrowed the headpiece from Pragnell, the same British jewelry house that designed her engagement ring. The piece is visually stunning, featuring delicate swags of diamonds suspended from a row of Greek keys, all beautifully topped with pearls. It is a very rare blend of both Edwardian and Art Deco design elements, and it is actually an heirloom belonging to the Pragnell family themselves. But it does carry its own fascinating royal connection. It was worn by members of the Pragnell family who attended the coronations of both King George VI and Queen Elizabeth II. There is also a deeply romantic secret behind Harriet's choice of this specific jeweler. Pragnell now owns the archives of Philip Antrobus, the very jeweler who created Queen Elizabeth II's engagement ring and wedding bracelet using diamonds from Prince Philip's mother. By choosing this tiara and pairing it with matching Pragnell pearl and diamond earrings, the bride made a beautiful, subtle nod to the ultimate royal love story of the late Queen and Prince Philip, all without relying on the Windsor vaults. These stunning wedding tiaras come with some fascinating backstories. Some actually broke right before the bride walked down the aisle, while others were locked away in vaults for decades before finally being worn again. Whether it's a piece chosen to honor a beloved mother or a floral design with a special meaning, these jewels always tell a great story. If you enjoyed this journey into the royal vaults, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss our next story. Thank you so much for watching and for spending this time with me. After all, these tiaras may spend most of their time locked away behind heavy doors, but their brilliance never truly fades as long as we keep telling their stories. I will see you next time!